Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Channel Talks. For those who are new, what we do here is deconstruct and then reassemble ideas and strategies to execute on the multi-trillion-dollar opportunity that is called customer retention, customer success, and also customer experience initiatives. We get very practical, so from this you'll be able to walk away with not just ideas, but strategy, and also executable, and being able to actually touch an execution strategy and know what to do in relation to customer experience. Well, it's been a while, and a lot of you have come back and said, why has it been a while? It's been several months since our last Channel Talks. Frankly, after the success of the first bunch, I've kind of walked out of the interviewer chair and been interviewed a lot. So that's been thrilling, that's been exciting, but I'm more excited to get back into the interviewer chair. Also, because we focus on bringing you industry rock stars, we filter out and make sure that what you get is real practical value. And in that, we've had some collateral advantage, I will call it, which is basically we've been drinking from the fire hose. And, with a small number of people that are growing rapidly in our organization, it's been thrilling. And I thank you all for that. And I thank you for the attention. And I thank you for participating with us and also working with us. But today is going to be no different, because today, probably my most exciting interview today, because what I have is what I would call the two godfathers of the customer success movement, who have created a category and executed on that category. I was going to bring my best fedora hat, and my wife said, don't do it, you look stupid. But so we'll stay away from the godfather and stay away from the movement and start talking into the category creation. Of course, I'm Nick Verikios, who I have today. Nick Mehta, the CEO of Gainsight, and Scott Frew, the CEO and founder of iasset.com. True category creators and also leaders, because they do have businesses and products. Usually what we do is focus on the analyst and then the executor. But today I have two executors, and what I will say is executors on theories and theses that they created themselves and entered into a market and have had incredible success. So gents, very quickly, please introduce yourselves, your backgrounds, and also the elevator pitch on what your organizations do.
Maybe you first, Nick.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here. Really, really excited. So I'm the CEO of Gainsight, and I'll give you a little personal background of sort of how I got to do what I do at Gainsight. So I have worked in technology my whole career. I started out in enterprise kind of on-premise technology. I was at a company called Veritas that some people probably knew, which made backup software. And then we were bought by Symantec. I was a general manager of a division at Veritas and Symantec. Had a great time in that old model of kind of, selling products and, moving on to the next customer, selling products, moving on to the next customer, you ship the software and your job was done. And then I got hired in 2008 to run my first cloud SaaS business. It was a company called LiveOffice, which was in the space of providing data archival for legal and compliance purposes. I ran that company, and what I learned was in that business, because our customers paid us month to month, or in some cases year to year, once I sold the customer, my job hadn't stopped. I got to keep re-earning their business because they had a lot of power to potentially switch and go to different services. And so in my last company, we invested a lot, not just in the sales and product process, but actually making sure customers got value and they adopted and they were going to stay with us. And that's what people, as most of you know, refer to as customer success. And so in 2013, after selling my last company, we launched Gainsight. And the idea behind Gainsight was, as more and more businesses move to these business models where customers have power, we can't afford to just sell and walk away anymore. We have to have this ongoing relationship with the customer to drive them to adopt what they've bought, to get them to be big fans, and to ideally get them to the business outcomes they're looking for so that they stay with us and they grow over time. And so Gainsight, our mission is to help businesses, both the vendors building products, but also the channel helping to deliver solutions, help us all close the gap between the desired outcome a customer is looking for and the value they've actually received. And in that process, keep our customers longer, get them to spend more money, and be bigger fans.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. And Scotty?
Scott Frew, Chief Executive of iasset.com. This is my fifth startup. I've sold them all successfully. I've always been in channels. In fact, it'll be coming up to 40 years next year, which is a bit scary. So iasset.com was born out of building a company called Distribution Central, which became one of the largest APAC distributors. And really, it took us from zero to $750 million in effectively no time, based on tracking all of the product life cycles of the channel. So hardware and maintenance, large-scale software subscriptions, and cloud consumption. And what I realized in 2008 is we'd built something special, and the vendors were calling us, asking us to do it for them in our region. I said, well, why wouldn't we do that for you globally? So I pushed it out as its own entity. I sold Distribution Central to Arrow Electronics, which is one of our biggest customers, and pursued the ISV market, which is completely different to channels, but and it's been exciting. But now we've got an absolute rocket ship of a platform. We're handling med tech, IT. We're looking at pharmaceuticals at the moment because they have all sorts of problems with tracking product life cycles in a different context. So we've been very successful, and we've just signed one of the largest IT manufacturers on the planet. So I'm looking forward to getting that out the door and impacting positively a whole lot of the channel lives.
So, hey, Scott and Nick, you guys are category creators, of course, and the category is termed customer success. And it's in terms of where it sits on the life cycle of categories, it's still on the left side of the chasm. Getting into we're building our boats to move across. And to me, that's always been almost. I want to use the word of nonsense, because it's a new thing. And when I talk to people outside of the industry, they go, well, when was it not a thing? When was customer success not a thing?
That's right.
We'll riff on that when at the end, if we can have some fun. But my question to you guys is, why now and not before? And Nick, you busted, go.
Yeah. Well, funny you say that, Nick. I was about to jump in, because literally when I told my wife what we're going to do and launch the company, and she doesn't work in tech, she was like, how was that not always the way people work? I was like, we're going to make sure that the stuff people bought is actually gets used and they get value from it. And she's like, wait, what? How did technology work before? And I think what's really happened is, as you both know well, but I think most of the audience does too, is the changes in business models driven by the changes in technology have shifted the power and to the customer, right? And what that's done is put the accountability on the vendor for making sure customers are getting value. In the old world, customer pays generally most of their money up front in terms of buying hardware, buying software, et cetera. And so therefore, the accountability for, did I install the software? Did I use it well? Did I get value? That's on the customer. That's on the IT manager. That's on right. The GSI, the Accenture that they hired. It's not on the vendor. But in this new model where the customer is paying you as they go, per month, per year, in some cases based on actual consumption, you think of an Amazon or Microsoft Azure or Google, the accountability for that outcome is now shifted to the vendor. And so before the vendor, we could almost live in a little bit of bliss knowing, okay, somebody's going to take care of that. We don't need to worry about that. And now all of us as vendors and also channel, we have to learn how to do all that kind of overnight, which is why it's changing so much.
Absolutely.
What's your take?
Well, I think so. Exactly to Nick's point. This has been an ongoing issue for a long time, but where we come in is the vendors need to do that to the end users, and US vendors in particular are okay because they're a local time zone effectively, they can do that. Right. But when you're talking globally and you've got a distribution level and a reseller or SP VAR level in front of you, that's fundamentally difficult to do because the VAR owns this business relationship with the customer. They don't have any tools, or they're lucky to have Excel running just to manage the quoting process and maybe an ERP out the back. So to Nick's point, where it all sort of comes together is vendor still gets that value out of, say, a Gainsight solution, but you've still got to drag this channel with you on that journey to make sure that not only the channel stays stuck to the vendor, but the end user stays stuck to the vendor as well.
I love that. And Scott, just one thing to add on that, because I think what you guys do and what we're talking about here is so important, so timely, is the early days of customer success. The vendors did, start doing it, in some cases directly with customers and so on. But the challenge is that, as you said, you can't reach all your customers that way. What about your global customers outside your region? But also typically you're only talking about your high touch, big customers that the vendor's dealing with directly. And so every big vendor we work with, VMware and Splunk and IBM and all these great big companies, their top thing every time I talk to them is, how do we work with the channel to drive customer success? It's always the number one strategic thing we hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My friend Jay McBain would answer that question that I asked, something like, well, data was messy, tools are now available, and it requires an ecosystem which exists, which is kind of like what you both are talking about. So, whether you guys have realized it or not, between the two of you, you kind of complement in terms of a practical execution of the vertical, which is a lot of what Gainsight do, and then a lot of what iasset.com are doing is bringing in all that influencer community to be able to inform the data and make it look like something that's useful to those who are executing on it. So
that's such a good point, Nick, because I think you're totally right. I didn't list the other part of it, which is you had the change in business model, you had the need for the channel to get involved, like Scott talked about. But it's also now possible. It wasn't possible before. When I was at Symantec years ago, even if I wanted to drive customer outcomes, there was no way to monitor what the customers were doing. There was no way to collaborate with the channel. Technology like iasset didn't exist. Technology like Gainsight didn't exist. Frankly, the underlying technology didn't exist with all the cloud and all that. So you're totally right. The technology is here now too.
So there you go, my friends. The answer is Gainsight plus iasset.com is a complete customer success execution strategy.
Global domination.
Go dominate. Go dominate. You heard it here first. But I'll be really excited to, after this call, to get into that, because the influencer community is so important, which is where Jay was coming from. Let me move it a little bit more into what you were talking about, Nick, before, which is things are always getting validated by metrics, right? And you both are mad on metrics. You both have different takes. Scott, you've built proactive, action-driven dashboards, to deliver the LIP strategy: land, invest, protect, surrender, which basically is metrics that inform the data to be able to inform the execution, so you can provide unsolicited proposals to the end customer to get more out of their IT spend, to actually get proper ROIs. And Nick, you talk a lot about, and I love the whole idea of the net dollar retention rates and NDR being really, really important. Can you guys Can you guys talk a little bit more about what they mean? And Nick, let's start with the NDR rates.
Yeah, sure. So just for people that don't know, just to give you some context, how did we all measure businesses before, right? We historically measured businesses in a very transactional way. You have a new order, you ship that order, maybe it's a product or service or whatever, you book some revenue on that order, and then you take another order, and then you have another order, and they just are just line items in your ERP system, right? But were those orders, new customers? Were they an existing customer adding on more? Was it a customer that left and another one that kind of made up for that? And most vendors really didn't think of their business that way. They thought of their business just as a kind of pile of orders, right? And that's kind of how manufacturing, we all kind of work with that mindset. But what's happened in the cloud and SaaS world is people adopted a new kind of second way of measuring the business. You still have your revenue and profit and all that, but you now have these metrics around what people refer to as your recurring revenue, your annual recurring revenue, your monthly recurring revenue. And that's looking at the customers, and for each customer, how much are they spending? So kind of a customer-centric view. And when you get into that type of methodology, you start looking at different KPIs, key performance indicators. One of the biggest ones is the retention rate. So if I have a customer that at the beginning of the year is spending $100,000 with me, by the end of the year, they're spending $90,000 with me. Are they spending $110,000 with me? $120,000. And the term people use is net dollar retention. That's a very US centric term. So net revenue retention a little bit more globally, right? What is that revenue retention for the existing clients? So key point here is I'm not including any new clients in this calculation. I'm looking at the portfolio of existing clients, say at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, those same clients, have they grown in collective spend? Have they shrunk, right? And there's so much information in there. Are your clients happy and growing with you? Are they leaving because they're unhappy? Are they dropping your products? That's this new metric people track.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not dissimilar to the old Wall Street same store sales, right?
Yeah,
measuring existing.
Actually, that's a really good analogy, Scott. Totally right.
Yeah. So in our world, in our predictive analytics and dashboards, we're really trying to, I guess, spoon feed the channel to make sure they've got everything in front of them to go and make sure that customer is either, if it's a cloud consumption piece, make sure they're billed correctly, or the next part of the subscription's being delivered, or they're upgrading or cross-grading, whatever they need to do. So ours is all about looking forward and trying to drive the channel to the next gate, if you like. So we're down more at that product level rather than the dollar level per se, but making sure everything's closed out of every opportunity inside that installed base. So it's not dissimilar. We're just coming at it at a product level.
I love it.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome point. You both are coming at it from different levels and coming in together, which is really exciting. So I'm gonna try and put a lot of what you guys are talking together and look at the opposite side to it, which is why we're so early in the process. We kind of quickly moved into why you should be in the process, but you guys are the godfathers of customer success. So you've got the battle scars to prove it. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about the battle scars, because I want you to give the audience your advice on how to get into this, because there are a lot of vendors, distributors, service providers that we talk to that still aren't engaged. And I'm not talking about just IT. I'm talking about everything, because it's the IT, and then it's also what we call the operations technology or OT market, because they're technical because they're connected to the network, this sacred network. And keeping in mind when you answer just of what some of the research identifies as constraints being, number one, being bad data. And in my mind, there's no such thing as bad data. It's just badly organized. Zeros and ones, shit. That's it can't be bad. It's just collected for a different reason. The second problem is where organizations think they can build these platforms that you guys have done themselves, which is a nonsense. And we've proven that time and time again. And the third one, third most popular, is someone else should be doing this for me. So Scott, if you want to take that one first. And
sure. If you want battle scars, my battle scars are generally CEOs saying, yes, we need to do this, let's get it done. And then Middle Earth, which is IT or some other department, going, no, we can do that ourselves. I seriously I've had an organization that I've had a conversation with every 2 years. We have this problem, we need to fix it. Okay, this is how we fix it. No, IT said they can build it. Well, we've been doing this for 8 years. I mean, they're not going to do it. A lot of people are trying to use Excel, which is a great financial planning tool, but a terrible, terrible customer success tool. So the battle scars, I think, really are apathy in our world. And then the second part of that is, I have a lot of people relying on distribution or the vendors to manage that process for me. Now, if you take one of the distributors who's running at a renewal rate, for example, of 47%, that means as a reseller, you're only ever going to be at 47%, because that's all the data they've really actually captured and are communicating to you. And if you put vendor, data is a bit bad because they don't have the channel bit all sorted, they don't know who's actually got the product. When you connect all those dots together and actually give them the opportunities in front of them, priced up in whatever language they want to take to the customer, your success rate goes through the roof. And I've taken one vendor from 22% to 94% over a period of 18 months just by connecting the dots and giving them the opportunities. Nick?
That's amazing, Scott, by the way. Those metrics are just incredible. And what we've seen, I mean, Nick, it feels like you were in our meetings, because all your things you brought up as the reasons for people not doing things are exactly what we see. And it's interesting. I'll play back a couple that you said and then maybe add one more. So one, you said bad data. And I love that. There's no bad data. It's just badly organized. It is data, right? It's a computer did it, right? The data is in the computer. I feel like it really is, it's turning into an excuse, honestly. The way I look at it is, 10 years from now, we're going to have, flying cars. We're going to be maybe on Mars. We're going to be, curing diseases we can't even imagine. Are we still going to have issues with our CRM data? Are we still going to be saying, we can't do anything because of the CRM fields are wrong? Like, there's no way. You have to just be like,
it's an excuse.
It is a poor excuse. And honestly, it's not acceptable anymore. I frankly think of the last year, especially with all the digital transformation, people are realizing they can't make that excuse. So that's number one. Number two, I think Scott and Nick, you both said it well. This whole, we can do this ourselves, we can build. And I think that's in some ways, I think that's like when people don't think something's very important and it's just very tactical, they're like, I'm just going to add a few fields into this other system. Or like you said, Scott, the spreadsheets.
Yeah, I love my macros.
Yeah, my macros. And it's just basically what you're saying is this isn't important to me. That's okay.
Right.
That's what you're saying. What you're saying is customer success is not important to me, which is, by the way, that's a powerful statement to make. So be careful of what you're saying. And then the third one I'd add in is I think there's definitely still this organizational mindset evolution. You guys are, we're preaching to each other's choirs right now. We believe this new world. And I think there's still, although there's a lot of companies that have evolved to the new world of cloud and SaaS, they haven't evolved the way they run their organization to that. They're using like a 1990s mindset in a 2020s business, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people like that. And I think that's just the natural thing. We get used to the way we do things. So they're running their organizations, whether it's a channel partner, whether it's a vendor, like we're in a world where customers don't have any power. And so therefore what happens is at the top, they don't prioritize this. They don't make it important. There might be some person further down in Middle Earth, as you say, that's working on this, but at the senior levels, they're not really putting priority into it. And one of the real specific problems is the senior leadership sometimes will give the platitudes. They'll say, customers are our most important asset, right? Something like that. But then they won't do anything about it. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, it's easy to put that on your wall. What are you actually going to do about it?
Yeah.
So we can
even with some of even with some of the private equity guys that are buying some of these channel companies are going, right, we're going through this massive digital transformation, let's go. And a PE wants to get rid of it in a couple of years. So they can't wait for them to spend 10 years building a platform that will actually digitally transform them. So it's crazy that the PE guys don't force the leadership into change rather than the leadership saying, yeah, we'll work on it ourselves.
Well, one encouraging data point, Scott and Nick, is actually we are seeing more and more PE firms actually forcing the change. Because like you said, they have the incentive, right? If they can make this change happen in 2 or 3 years, they were going to get the financial benefit.
Absolutely.
And so one of our fastest growing parts of our business is private equity backed companies where the PE sponsor is actually realizing this is a great way to create value. They talk about value creation, creating value in the company. This is one of the best levers to create value, renewal rate,
Absolutely. So it's not in the PE world, but VCs are starting to think about the tool set they enforce into, especially IT startups, because IT startups never think about renewals. I spend half my life talking to IT startups that are like, we're selling this product, it's going mad, but we haven't done anything about renewals.
Yeah, it's insane because we're now no longer in the distribution world. We're in the SaaS world of customer success and customer retention, and we talk to a lot of vendors, and they measure their renewal rates, and they say, we're about 80 to 90%. Now, 80 to 90% is still a big fail relative to our experience of 95 plus. When we were doing distribution, and we were doing advanced and emerging technologies as well. So you'd think some of it would be set and forget. There was no, up until, the last major, the last vendor we signed before we sold was HPE. And up until that, it was just advanced technologies. All right. So, that's why we started to look at land. Yeah, okay, tick, and then people walk away. But it's the expand and the extends and the invests and also the surrendering of the asset. And if you're not at the forefront of that and you're waiting for a vendor to give you that, then what value are you giving? Because, ultimately the prime contractor, whoever that may be, is responsible for that customer, and they have this notion that they own the customer. Well, they don't. The best thing you can do is rent a customer, and everything's contentious. Right. And when they don't, and when we talk to other distributors even, and they say, "Oh yeah, we're doing well. Our renewal rates are 40%." That's the biggest failing you could, they do it, say it with a smile on their face. You've got to be kidding. Well, there was this company that I used to own with Scott that did 95 was a fail. 90, that was a fail, and it's because you're pushing the proposal to them and staying at the front of them, because what they don't realize is even the renewal is contested. It's absolutely contested. And it's not only contested for the prime contractor, it's contested at the vendor level too, because we've got so much churn going on. And the biggest reason why we've got churn going on is because we're moving from on-premises to digital transformation that says everything's as a service and SaaS. So if you're not ahead of it, not in front of it, and you're not using tools like, the iasset and Gain, and I'm going to call it the iasset and Gainsight conglomerate now, because no one should do this without the other. Just you guys have touched on some really brilliant points here that make me say that. I'm not just saying that, to be cute, but you're now in a position where you have to provide essential value. So the question is, how do you fast track that? When people are sitting back, and I love what you said, Nick, about it's an excuse. How do you take that excuse away? But I want to share some research with you guys first. All right, and this is from TSIA, where they talk to anyone who has an objective of customer success. And believe it or not, that research said it wasn't, everyone. So again, does my head in that everyone does it as an objective of customer success. But if you turn the narrative, and when we take that research and talk to people and turn that narrative into customer retention, 100%, we all have. And what's the freaking difference? But they break it down like this. Of those who are interested in customer success and also the customer experience, 43% are interested in adopting, which is basically around the basic renewal and profit protection. 37% is around retention. Why is it at 100? 19% is around expansion, which is growth on top of what you've already sold, which is what we tend to call customer success. And then 1% is the category of other, which is reference architectures and selling. You've sold something, you've sold the other. Now, while that truth exists, in terms of like, let's turn the idea of it's a nonsense into here's some fact. All right, what's the fast track? What would you guys recommend is for anyone listening to this as the fast track in getting into customer success, customer retention, customer experience, whatever you want to call it, but retaining your revenue in the customer that you're working with? Nick, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I think probably three things that might make sense to kind of one that's about sort of the strategy, one that's about people, and one that's about kind of process and technology. So at the strategy level, I think you've got to look at if you're a leader of a channel organization, you're a leader of a vendor managing channel relationships, you've got to look at the metrics you use to measure your progress and make sure those metrics are updated for 2021. Are you looking at the old metrics and just the old bookings and what's our revenue and all that? Are you looking at the new metrics that kind of the SaaS cloud world looks at, like I talked about? That's because if you start looking at those metrics, then you're going to start changing your behavior overnight. Number two, and by the way, I think you guys can help. It sounds like a lot in helping people improve those metrics. Number two, the second thing you can do is bring some people into your organization that have some of this knowledge, right?
Absolutely.
This customer success knowledge is not brand new anymore. It's cutting edge, but people are starting to cross the chasm, like Nick talked about. And so they're bringing some people in to organization at an individual contributor level, at a leader level. I spent a lot of time actually helping people find executives for customer success. It's a very robust market right now, something to consider. And then number three is, I would say that one of the biggest risks people have is they get stuck at the platitude. What I mean by that is they get stuck at saying customer is number one. What are you going to do in terms of your processes, your systems to make that a reality every day? Obviously, that is what iasset and Gainsight do. But whether it's with us or anywhere else, it's really how you're going to take this strategy and turn it into a change in behavior. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to be saying stuff about what we're talking about here and doing the exact same thing you've always done.
Yeah.
Honestly, wasting your time.
And we see that a lot. We see a lot of we're digitally transforming, and then in the back, there's nothing going on. There's just a whole lot of guys running around madly.
That's right. Exactly.
But if I can, to me, the difference between customer retention and customer success, and I'm going to go off the reservation here because I own a beef cattle farm as well, is like the difference between sustainability and regeneration. So if the earth today does sustainable everything, we are still in a world of hurt. Climate change is still going to happen. We're still polluting and changing the atmosphere. Regeneration is all about fixing that and bringing it back. So customer retention is, okay, I'm holding on to them. Customer success is I'm accelerating. So it's a defensive word to an attack word. And that's the big difference, which not a lot of people get, because we often, I don't know about you, Nick, but we often get pigeonholed just in the renewals guys or the back end operations guys, right? They don't see this as actually a strategic asset that they need to put at the forefront of the business. Now, the ones that have gone cloud already, the early adopters like Adobe and guys like that, they've changed their entire business. They don't kind of have net new. It's all about retention and success flying through that. What our technology guys and our channel partners have to realize is if they want to survive, there's no greenfield sites. You're not going to sell new tech to anyone. It's all about swapping out competitor technology or competitor systems. How do you get through that and then accelerate up?
I love that. Scott, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, that analogy is awesome. And it really resonates because so many people, tied to your climate change example, so many people approach this and they say, oh, we need to get more renewals. right? But the truth is, the renewal is at the very end of the process. Frankly, the customers usually made up their decision already. They have migrated to a totally different technology, and you're calling them to get the renewal. 30 days till the renewal. It's like, okay, like they're not even calling you back, right? We've all been there, and the companies that are really doing this right are approaching it over the whole life cycle from the beginning all the way through to the renewal, so that the renewal is a non-event because you've driven the value and adoption.
Absolutely.
And I know, I'm sure many people listening know that, like, as an example, Cisco has this program now where they're trying to get their partners to take on a customer experience certification and actually start from the beginning and help. The channel partners help the end customer go through the adoption and onboarding the early part of the life cycle. And in Cisco's case, they actually kind of, for the advanced certification, mandated that the channel partner actually buys technology like a Gainsight and an iasset to actually really make sure that happens. And so they're probably ahead of the curve for most, but I think that's where we're going to be seeing in the future, is that the vendors and the channel are going to have to work together to make this a life cycle thing, not just a renewal thing.
Absolutely. And we're already engaged in a number of Cisco resellers, especially in North America and Europe, to effectively deliver life cycle advantage so they can go and get their certs and maintain them.
That's awesome. We are too. And it's a great example of where this is coming together.
Which is interesting, because the vendors are actually throwing their incentives now into, customer success and customer experience, not in, did you sell this many boxes or that many boxes? Because that's almost like a given. Nick, you might enjoy this. 10 years ago, I started to throw a mantra out, which was, if at first you don't succeed, renew. It's the last thing you do. It's the last thing you do.
That's hilarious.